So we are going to switch gears quite a bit now and briefly talk about ethics in ABA. So you will have a course completely on ethics that will get into much more depth. However, because a lot of you are currently in the field, starting your practicum hours, and integrating ABA into your practices, it's important to have at least an overview of ethics. There are a couple different guidelines and laws that we need to abide by depending on the environment you're working in. Overall, you always need to abide by the BACB guidelines. So they have a link that's posted here on the Professional Ethical Compliance Code. Please look at that and review it in quite a bit of depth. That is our overall ethical code that we need to abide by. And then depending on where your work environment is, there are some different laws. So there's special education law, federal and state laws, general education law, federal and state laws, and then healthcare laws. So if you're working through an agency um, or an agency that's billing insurance, it would be healthcare law along with hospital settings and that environment. So in the notes here, we've broken it down between education law and then healthcare law. Again, overall arching is the BACB guidelines though. So with education law, we'll talk about consent, personal identification, IEP, and review of records. Look through all of those areas. There is a description of FAPE, which is free and appropriate education. Free and appropriate public education that needs to be abided by. And then there is the IDEA Act. So those two things are the big driving forces of education law. And then those procedural safeguards are always handed out to every parent and are accessible through online. So if you are working in a school district and you've never seen procedural safeguards for your district or your state, that's something you'd probably want to Google, and that can also help you learn about the ethical guidelines and what the school is responsible for in terms of IEPs. We also go into here FERPA, so the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, so please review that as well. And then HIPAA. So HIPAA is associated to healthcare plans. So this is the Privacy Act that we need to adhere by. And it goes over appropriate information to disperse or to withhold. So basically, we never want to give any type of information regarding our clients on identifying information, so names, addresses, diagnosis, anything that could identify a child or a client. We'll also go over written consent, and then we briefly talk about the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, and then just overall tips. So after you've gone through all of this, and I'm not going to go through and read each bullet point off because this has been a pretty long lecture this week already, but the overall take-home message, just as bad as it sounds, keep your mouth shut. Just only give what information is needed and not more. Avoid social media. Do not post anything on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know what other social media venues are out there at this point, but anything related to a client should not be discussed on social media. Only use a need to know basis. And then always have written consent. So if you are communicating and collaborating with other care providers, which is highly encouraged, just make sure you have written consent from the parent in order to do that. If you do have questions about any of these ethical guidelines or codes or laws, please let me know. We'll also have a discussion topic reviewing some of this as well.